You want more cinematic videos, but you think it takes too much work or you need a lot of hardware. Well, I'm going to tell you exactly how to do it with very, very little. It's actually not as hard as you think. You just follow a couple rules. So I'm going to teach you how to make your room, studio, whatever it is, from something like this, which is just natural daylight bouncing around the room, to something like this. In this video, you will learn how to easily understand what it takes to make your videos beautiful like this. This is the setup with no lights, no nothing. This is my Sony a7S III filming me. It's picking up the lighting really nice. There's some snow bouncing off. It has a colder tone. It's looking actually surprisingly pretty good. I would actually use this footage. Now my camera, the Sony a7S III, is pretty good with like not a lot of light. And then I'm also filming on my iPhone 14 Pro, and I'm sure it's doing pretty good. It probably looks kind of good, honestly. Now, good is one thing, but great is another. And if it's just a few tweaks to give a little more separation, a little more interest, a little more of a professional feel, that's the goal. The goal is to, present and package up something that elevates its value, right? So like on Christmas or Hanukkah, whatever, your presents are wrapped in a presentation so that it's like, oh my gosh, here you go. And same with like my girlfriend on a date. She's dressed up in a nice dress and it's like, wow, this is amazing. Put things in a presentation together really elevates the value for that moment. So that's the goal. The goal is to look more professional or more valuable or more trustworthy, so on, and just really match what you are. So the first thing that we want to do is get a main key light, and I have that right over here and it's filming me. This is pretty good too. Like, I don't see anything terribly wrong with this. The good thing with this is the first step, the most important step, is being able to see your face. We can push this and make it more cinematic later. I'll show you like another step if it was more movie-like, but for a talking head, we want the light here. I recommend having it slightly to one side, just give it a little bit more dimension, or slightly angled somehow, and find one that works for your facial features. But I know that that works for me, for this setup. And honestly, if you can diffuse the light, and I'll talk about that in a bit, it doesn't matter what kind of lamp you have. And then I have the lights behind me, right? So I have this light and it's the same as a light over here that's off screen. And this light's just gonna hit the background. So I'll turn that on and that's in the background. And then this light is facing me and it should have a little bit of a separation. So the key is you have some kind of a lighting in the background. They can be Christmas lights, it can be little candles, it can be whatever. Because that light's not really doing too much for me. It's not doing anything on my face, right? See, this light here is just props almost. And it gives a separation of me from the background. So that's one of the key things. If you can just get a light and then some sort of lights behind you, some kind of a like smaller lights, it's just, honestly, it's a super small hack. But if you can do that, and then if you have another light, right, just pointing at you, that would be really good. And that one doesn't need any treatment. You could literally use a shop light. I've used a flashlight, no joke. Like, I just have a flashlight over here. And if I were to just rest it on a table or something like that, you can see how much more separation that gives from the background. All I'm doing is just using a little flashlight. And I've done this before a number of times. So it's not like a rare occasion. I do it enough. So far we're not using anything crazy. The thing to talk about here is this main light. So what we want to do when we think about the main light, and this can be a window, it can be a regular lamp, is we want a white balance to it so that it's color accurate, and you would just make sure that your white balance is making you look like your skin tones are good and so on. Just set it. I have it on auto right now. If your light was a little more yellow, like let's say this background, if I were to change it to a little more yellow, if that were to change with that, we would want it to adapt. Now, to make it even more like cinematic, like thinking John Wick or something like that, we want to do some kind of an orange, teal, purple, blue, some kind of color combo. So I'm just going to switch those over to some sort of like a red and blue. And I've already made these, but as you can see, it's more interesting. And if I were to go in and color grade it, it's really going to take these assets, these ingredients, and bring them to the next level. So it's really, really simple step, but if you don't have the ingredients, then you can't cook it very well. All right, so as far as the key light goes, this is unnecessary for the most part. So we have the light source, and I'm gonna remove this in a second. And this is a very hard light. When the light is really small, it casts really hard shadows versus a very diffused light. It's like a big cloudy day, like a clouds in the sky, diffuse the light. That's why there's no shadows on a cloudy day, right? No hard shadows because it's a bigger light source than the sun. What we want to do is we want to recreate this for you, and it doesn't matter what the light is. Now, looking at the setup of just this pure light, and again, this can be any lamp. This one's very, very strong, so you want a very high-powered bulb. But you can see on the wall here, there's some hard shadows. So what we want to do is diffuse that. So, you somehow would mount a diffuser, a sheet or whatever, and that's going to make that light look really good. So let me show you what it looks like right now, and then we'll go back and diffuse it. So this is what it looks like with the bare bulb. You can see the hard shadows, and this is a very good indicator. Like, they're very, very harsh. It's going to pick up a lot of texture in my skin. It's also bleeding pretty crazy back there. This is why we don't want, and it's kind of unacceptable to do this. The first trick I'm going to do before we even diffuse it, we're going to diffuse it and in another way. We're going to bounce it. So we're going to bounce it off the wall, and it's going to create a bigger diffusion. So let me show you what I mean by that. Now, this is the hack that I really want you to listen to, is we wanted to diffuse it. We wanted to make this small bulb bigger. The light source needs to grow and scale. So one of the best ways that I've found, that's the cheapest way, which is actually very popular in high-end movie sets, and Roger Deakins is famous for bounce lighting, is I just turned that small bulb, small, into a large light source, right? So again, small little light, bouncing it. Now the light size is this big. So if we go back and we see that this is a giant, bigger light source, you're going to see immediately how much softer it is. So look at this. This is amazing. This is a really, really flattering lighting. It's going to give me nice skin tones. Like, it's not going to have harsh texture. Look at, there's almost no hard shadows. None are bouncing off the wall. And you saw this up. I just turned it from a small light into a big light. Now, because of this thing called inverse square law, light starts to fall off rapidly through distance. So this is max power for this light. I cannot get it brighter. That's okay. We can brighten it up in post-production in an editor, but honestly, this is pretty good. I think this is acceptable. And if I had brought out that flashlight and I had that bringing out some separation here, something like that, that's going to look pretty solid. It's going to look really good. Now, this is actually facing the door here, but what I can do is bring it closer, right? And face the wall here. So it's actually bouncing off the wall that's right near my desk. So now the light source is bigger and brighter, but it's also closer to me. So let me show you what that looks like, because this is another way you want to think about it. Like, how can you turn the small light into a big light? Now look at that, another really nice look. I was able to get this brighter, so there's more of that contrast, and it's right there. It's, in my vision, the light is about that big versus, that big. And it's going to look pretty good, I think. The idea is to spread out that light, that little piece of light, as much as we can. It's going to change everything. Literally, you can use a flashlight against a wall. You can use whatever household light, use some tinfoil so it's all going in the same direction. Anything like that is going to really spread out the light in a very directional sense. Okay, now for a final set, I'm just going to use a pillowcase. I honestly just don't know where the white sheet is, but you would use a white sheet or muslin fabric or something like that. And I just have a little thing. It doesn't matter. It can be a drying rack. Just something to hold up the sheet. And what we're going to do is just put it in front of this, we're going to turn what this light is into a bigger soft spot. So we just put this on. And now that light is shining right into that, making the small light a bit bigger. What this doing is mimicking this thing. Now this is a pretty much cheap regular version of this thing, right? It takes a small part and makes it into a big part. And that's how that works. And that's why that looks so much nice. Let me show you what it looks like. As you can see, it's really about the thinking. What lamp can you just shoot into a giant sheet or bounce off of the wall? That's the one that's going to be lighting up you. You know, as you see, no shadows. You want to get rid of those shadows by making that small thing big. It's really that simple. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Honestly, you can get creative. It doesn't have to follow rules. Personally, shooting it through a sheet is probably one of the best, easiest ways to do it. But if not, then, you know, make sure all the light is going into a wall and bounce it off of a wall. Hopefully the wall doesn't have a lot of color to it, and that would be helpful. And then have lights behind you, you know, give it some visual interest, something to pop. Have a light shooting at you from the back. That helps. It's like bonus points. That's like pro points. And if you don't have one, just like set up a flashlight. You can set up a flashlight behind you and just point it out. Mine's just laying on the table right behind me. And you should be good. That's going to get the pro thing. Then, like I said, if it's a little dark, that's okay. That's when you go into post and you brighten it up, add a little bit of contrast, and you should be sweet. So the whole idea with this video is to help you understand that there's a theory behind it, that it's not complicated, that you can just go in whimsically, kind of half-ass it, and just be carefree and just focus on the video and know that you can get something pretty good. If you want to, you know, go on and tone it and correct it with some LUTs, I have some LUTs available. So if you're interested in those, the link is in the description. Really, honestly, it's about thinking about it. Like I have a flashlight behind me, you know, like I said, it's just a stupid flashlight. I have just a light and a pillowcase in front of me. You know, honestly, I can do this anywhere. So if I go to the living room and I, you know, move to the lamp, I like face the lamp, I'd make sure that there's some lights on behind me. And I don't care about like the one that's like facing me as much. I'm only concerned with how big the one that's in front of me more than anything. Now this video isn't over yet because I promised you I'd help you make something more cinematic in general when it's not just a talking head. So I want to show you that right now. So this is the setup that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be sitting here and writing in this notepad, and I want it to look cinematic. And right now, obviously it doesn't. I'm shooting too wide. The lighting is weird. Even though you think, well, why not? Like, why can't we just make this? Why doesn't it look like cinematic? Well, the one trick I want to instill on you is called short side lighting. And honestly, it's opposite of what most people think. When I first started getting into lighting, I thought cinematic was contrast and all of these other things. And like, you know, the lighting has got to be tons of colors, but it's not. It's honestly, in my opinion, what cinematic looks like is short side lighting and dark and flat-ish. So let me show you what I want to do. First, what most people do wrong and why it looks like that. So you might be wondering, why does it look so uncinematic? Well, it's because the light is just illuminating everything. It's right to the right of the camera, dead on, straight into the whole scene. There's not really that much contrast. There's not much going on. So the trick of short side lighting is to wrap that light around the back and film into the shadows. So the light is scraping across the scene. So we'll move that light around, and then that's all I've changed. No exposure, no nothing. And then if I add my LUT and a little bit of a contrast on it, bam, now we're getting some kind of cinematic moody look, and it just looks beautiful. All I did was change that lighting. I hope that that's really helpful to you. If you're interested in more about production and specifically how to look better on Zoom calls and a little bit more in depth to some production techniques, I have a very, very new, affordable course on how to look like a pro on Zoom calls, but specifically some nuances of how you behave and come across not just visuals as far as, being online. Like, yeah, making a YouTube video is great, but a lot of times we're just on calls and we really want to have that same air to you, that same authority when you are on a Zoom call, not just on your YouTube video. So how do we go about doing that? That's what the course is for. So if you're interested in that, click the link below. Until next time, cheers.